The Secret Drawer, Chapter 1, The Weight of Unopened Wood. For 60 years, the antique mahogany dresser stood in the corner of Evelyn and Amber's shared living room. A silent sentinel guarding a profound, unspoken command. Its dark wood gleamed with the polish of generations, its ornate brass handles hinting at stories untold. Yet for Amber, its presence was less about history and more about an immutable law, whispered by her mother Evelyn. Since Amber could first understand words, "Never open this dresser, never, not even after I'm gone. Promise me, Amber." The promise had been etched into Amber's very soul. Evelyn, her mother, was a woman of fierce will and an almost suffocating devotion. She had been Amber's sole focus, especially after her father, Robert, faded from memory in Amber's early childhood, a vague, kindly presence. Evelyn's love was a cocoon, thick and warm, but also strangely binding. Amber had lived her life tethered to her mother, forgoing marriage, children, a career that might take her far from home. She had nursed Evelyn through years of illness, fueled by a deep sense of obligation, a silent repayment for a love that felt both absolute and impossibly heavy. The dresser, that forbidden repository, became the tangible symbol of everything unspoken between them. Evelyn's sudden, melancholic silences, her intense, almost desperate grip on Amber, and the unasked questions that always swirled just beneath the surface of their quiet lives. Now, at 60, Amber sat alone in the house, the silence amplifying the echo of her mother's voice. Evelyn was gone, finally released from her long suffering just weeks before. The initial wave of grief had receded, leaving behind a vast, desolate emptiness. But with the emptiness came a new, unbearable weight. The dresser, the prohibition, once so absolute, now felt like a living entity, pulling at her, demanding resolution. She looked at it, a dark, rectangular shadow in the sunlit room, and felt an overwhelming compulsion to break her promise, to finally understand the woman who had shaped every breath of her life, to liberate herself from the lingering shadow of the secret. A cold dread coiled in her stomach. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that whatever lay behind those polished drawers was not benign. It was something profound, something that had twisted her mother's beautiful spirit, something that had cast a long, silent shadow over Amber's entire existence. But the curiosity, the desperate need for answers, was stronger than the fear. She walked towards the dresser, her footsteps echoing in the empty house, her hand trembling as she reached for the uppermost handle. The weight of unopened wood was about to be lifted, and Amber knew, instinctively, that her life would never be the same. The secret drawer was finally about to yield its truth. Chapter 2, Dust and Whispers of a Boy. The scent of dust and aged wood filled the air as Amber's trembling fingers finally grasped the ornate brass handle. A small, almost imperceptible click, and the first drawer glided open. It was stiff, protesting years of disuse, its silence finally broken. Emily held her breath, peering into the shadowed interior. It wasn't what she expected. No jewels, no scandalous letters, no hidden will. Instead, a neatly folded stack of tiny faded clothes. A minuscule knitted sweater, a pair of soft, impossibly small blue booties, a yellowed flannel receiving blanket. They were boys' clothes, too small for Amber, even as a baby. A wave of profound confusion washed over her. Her mother had never spoken of another child. Beneath the clothes, nestled carefully, was a small stack of papers, a worn, faded hospital discharge summary. Her mother's name, Evelyn Miller, was at the top. The date, 1960, 4 years before Amber's birth. The patient name, Evelyn Miller. Diagnosis, postpartum complications. And then a small handwritten note in the margin, infant male, DOA, dead on arrival, or stillborn. Amber's breath hitched. A baby. A boy. Her mother had given birth to a baby boy before her, and he had died, stillborn. The realization hit her with a physical force, knocking the air from her lungs. This was the secret, the reason for the silence, the source of her mother's melancholic gazes, her quiet despair. Her mother had lost a child, a son. Beneath the hospital record, Amber found a tiny, leather-bound diary, no bigger than her palm. Its cover was etched with faded gold initials, T.D. Her mother's maiden name wasn't D. What did T.D. stand for? Opening it, Amber was met with a meticulous, elegant script, distinctly masculine, yet unfamiliar. The entries began in 1958, chronicling a passionate, clandestine love affair. September 14th, 1958. Evelyn. My Evelyn. She burns brighter than any star. This stolen time with her, away from the prying eyes of the town, is pure heaven. My family would never understand. Her traditional values, my obligations. We are two worlds, but our hearts beat as one. May 2nd, 1959. Joy and terror. Evelyn is pregnant. A child. Our child. My family will disown me. What have I done? What have we done? But her eyes, filled with such hope. I must find a way, for her, for our baby. Amber felt a dizzying sense of disorientation. This wasn't her father, Robert. The timeline was all wrong. Her parents had married in 1963. This was 1959. Who was T.D., and what had happened to him? The diary stopped abruptly in late 1959, just before the baby would have been due. Her mind raced, connecting fragmented pieces. Her mother's intense, almost suffocating love, her deep-seated fear of loss. It all began to make a terrible, heartbreaking sense. The dresser was not just a symbol of a secret. It was a shrine to a lost child, a monument to a love affair shattered by circumstance. Overwhelmed, Amber pulled out her phone and called her lifelong best friend, Sarah. Sarah, warm and pragmatic, listened in stunned silence as Amber recounted her discoveries. Amber, Sarah said, her voice filled with sympathy. This explains so much about your mother. Her grief, it must have been unbearable. And the shame, in those days, for an unwed mother, it was crippling. But who was T.D., Sarah? And where is he now? Amber's voice was raw with unanswered questions. Sarah suggested they seek out Dr. Ben Carter, their old family physician. He was retired now, well into his 80s, but he had known Evelyn for decades. They found him in a quiet retirement home, his mind sharp, his eyes kind. When Amber gently explained her discovery, showing him the hospital discharge summary, Dr. Carter's face softened with a distant sadness. Evelyn, he murmured, a strong woman, a deeply wounded woman. He confirmed the stillbirth. It was tragic, Amber, a very difficult delivery. She nearly didn't make it herself. It broke her heart, truly broke it. In those days, unwed mothers, it was a scandal. and her family was very conservative. It was a very dark time for her. "And TD," Amber pressed. "Do you know who he was?" Dr. Carter hesitated, a shadow crossing his face. "Tyler Davis," he finally said, his voice low. "From a very old, very influential family in town. His parents, they were ruthless. They forbade the marriage. They threatened to disown him. They forced him to leave town, never to contact Evelyn again. They paid for a private clinic, out of state, to ensure discretion. It was a cruel, cruel time, Amber. Evelyn loved him desperately, and she loved that baby. Losing them both, it scarred her. Profoundly." He paused, looking at Amber with a knowing gaze. "She tried to move on. Robert, your father, was a good man. He came into her life when she was still so fragile. He loved her, and he accepted her past. He knew about Tyler, and he knew about the baby." Amber felt a wave of dizzying confusion. Robert knew? And if the baby was stillborn, what about the possibility of another child? The dresser, that silent keeper of secrets, had only just begun to whisper its true story. The dust and whispers of a lost boy hinted at a much larger, more labyrinthine family narrative. Chapter 3. The Ghost of Tyler Davis and a New Shadow. The revelation of Tyler Davis and the stillborn child Daniel had cracked open the carefully constructed veneer of Amber's family history. Her mother, Evelyn, was not just the woman who had nurtured her, but a survivor of a devastating, secret past. Her father, Robert, a benevolent ghost of her childhood, was now revealed as a man of profound compassion, who had knowingly stepped into Evelyn's life, accepting her brokenness and her buried grief. The understanding of their sacrifices brought a complex mixture of sorrow and admiration. But the dresser, that deceptively simple piece of furniture, seemed to hold more. A gnawing intuition urged Amber to continue. She opened the second drawer. This drawer contained more letters. Not from Tyler Davis, but from a different hand, a delicate, elegant script that Amber recognized as Evelyn's. These were letters Evelyn had written to a mysterious Sister Agnes at an orphanage or adoption agency, spanning several years, from 1961 to the late 1970s. The letters spoke of visits, of my precious boy, of watching him from afar, of a terrible sacrifice, and my hope that he found happiness. Amber's blood ran cold. Stillborn. Dr. Carter had said stillborn. But these letters, they spoke of a living child, a boy, her mother's first son. He hadn't died. He had been given away. The true depth of Evelyn's sacrifice, the daily agony of knowing her child was alive but unreachable, hit Amber with a devastating force. She continued to read, her heart pounding. The letters detailed Evelyn's agonizing decision, coerced by Tyler Davis's powerful family, who had threatened to ruin Evelyn and Tyler if the child, a product of their illicit affair, was not quietly given up for adoption. Tyler's family had orchestrated the entire process, ensuring complete anonymity, desperate to protect their family name. Evelyn had been young, terrified, and utterly alone. With no means to fight them, Robert, her eventual husband, had only entered her life after the child had been placed for adoption, becoming her solace in the aftermath of her unbearable loss. The letters continued through the years, Evelyn pouring out her heartache, her longing to see her son. In one letter, dated 1978, Evelyn wrote, "Sister Agnes, I saw him again today. He is growing into such a fine young man, so bright, so kind. He has his father's eyes, but his spirit is all mine. I yearn to embrace him, but I know I cannot. It would only cause him pain and bring shame upon the wonderful family who raised him. I carry his memory, his presence, in my heart always. The letters hinted at Evelyn maintaining a distant, anonymous connection, perhaps through Sister Agnes, receiving updates on her son's life, observing him from afar, a silent, loving phantom in his world. Then, a new, more recent set of letters appeared in the drawer, from the late 1980s. These were from a lawyer discussing an inheritance, a small trust fund left by Tyler Davis, who had died young, reportedly from a sudden illness. The lawyer's letters mentioned an unnamed beneficiary, hinting at the son Tyler had never publicly acknowledged. Tyler, it seemed, had tried, in his own way, to make amends. But the most perplexing discovery lay beneath these letters: 2 birth certificates. One was Amber's, clearly stating Evelyn Miller as her mother and Robert Miller as her father. The other was for a boy named Daniel. His birth date was 1960. The mother was Evelyn Miller. The father was Tyler Davis. Confusion swirled. Daniel, the stillborn child, whom the letters proved was not stillborn, but given up. This child, Daniel, was born in 1960. Amber was born in 1964. The mystery of 2 different fathers and the stillbirth versus adoption story created a fresh wave of unsettling questions. If Daniel was given away, why had Evelyn lied about him being stillborn? And why had she claimed Robert as Amber's father when she already knew he wasn't Daniel's? A new, unsettling shadow fell across the dresser. It was not just a symbol of a lost child, but a repository of a secret more intricate, more personal than Amber could ever have imagined. Chapter 5: The Medical Record and the True Adoption. The presence of 2 birth certificates, one for Daniel, son of Evelyn and Tyler Davis, born 1960, and one for Amber, daughter of Evelyn and Robert Miller, born 1964, plunged Amber into a new, dizzying abyss of questions. If Daniel, Evelyn's first child, had been given up for adoption, why had her mother told Dr. Carter, and presumably everyone else, that he was stillborn? And more crucially, how could Robert be her father if he wasn't Daniel's? Had Evelyn had another affair? The thought was jarring, inconsistent with everything Amber knew of her mother's reserved character. Driven by a desperate need for clarity, Amber continued her meticulous excavation of the dresser's 3rd drawer. This one contained a jumble of seemingly innocuous items: old ribbons, dried flowers, a child's tooth fairy box, a tiny, intricately carved wooden bird. And beneath it all, hidden in a velvet pouch, a small stack of faded medical records. Evelyn's medical records. Amber's hands trembled as she opened the brittle pages. Dates spanning from 1960 to 1963. She scanned through them, her eyes darting for answers. One diagnosis leaped out: dated late 1960, shortly after Daniel's birth. Severe postpartum complications, probable endometriosis, followed by notes about difficulty conceiving and repeated unsuccessful attempts at pregnancy in the subsequent years. A specialist's report dated 1963 stated, "Patient Evelyn Miller, highly unlikely to carry a pregnancy to term. Further attempts not advised due to risk to patient's health." A cold dread settled in Amber's stomach. Evelyn couldn't have children after Daniel, not naturally. The implications hit her with the force of a physical blow. If Evelyn couldn't conceive or carry a baby to term after 1960, how was Amber born in 1964? Robert couldn't be her biological father. Evelyn couldn't be her biological mother. The truth, stark and terrifying, began to coalesce. Amber was adopted, not by her mother and Robert as a couple trying to expand their family, but by Evelyn alone. Perhaps even in secret from Robert initially, or with his reluctant, loving compliance. This was the ultimate betrayal, the most profound secret, the reason for the dresser's lifelong ban. This was why her mother had guarded her so fiercely, why her love felt so possessive, so desperate. It wasn't just the grief of a lost child, it was the fear of losing another, a child she had chosen, a child who wasn't hers by blood. Frantic, Amber continued her search. Beneath the medical records, she found a series of legal documents, neatly tucked away. Adoption papers. The names blurred. The adoptive parents, Evelyn Miller and Robert Miller. The child, Amber Louise. Her name. The birth parents were listed as unnamed. But then, a separate small handwritten note, tucked into the adoption file, caught her eye. It was from Sister Agnes, the same Sister Agnes from the orphanage letters, dated 1964. Evelyn, my dear, I know this is difficult, but your son Daniel expressed such desperation. His young wife, God rest her soul, gone so soon after childbirth. He could not care for the baby. He came to me, seeking a loving home for his daughter. When I heard you were searching, I knew this was fate, a chance for healing, a chance for you to finally hold a child of your own blood, even if not directly from your womb. This little girl, she is your grandson's daughter. She is your granddaughter. Please, Evelyn, consider this carefully. It is a gift, a chance to heal a past wound. Amber crumpled to the floor, the papers scattering around her. Her head spun. Granddaughter, not daughter. Her mother, Evelyn, was her grandmother, and her father, Robert, her adoptive grandfather. Daniel, the stillborn turned adopted son, was her biological father. Her long-lost uncle was her biological father. The labyrinth of secrets unfolded, each twist more profound than the last. Evelyn, unable to have more children after Daniel, had secretly adopted Daniel's daughter, Amber, to raise as her own. It was an act of desperate love, an attempt to mend the gaping wound of losing her son by embracing his child. The dresser, once a symbol of childhood mystery, now transformed into a vault holding the most shattering, yet ultimately most profound family truth. This was why her mother had forbidden her to open it, not just to protect her from pain, but to protect Amber's carefully constructed world and Evelyn's own desperate, loving secret. Chapter 6, The Embrace of Truth. The revelation that Evelyn was not her mother, but her grandmother, that Daniel, the stillborn boy given up for adoption, was her biological father, sent Amber reeling. The world shifted beneath her feet. Every memory, every cherished photograph, every shared moment with Evelyn, now seen through a profoundly altered lens. She was a granddaughter, raised as a daughter, by a woman consumed by grief and a desperate need for redemption. The quiet home in Austin, once a sanctuary, now felt like a stage where a lifelong play of deception had been performed. Hours passed, then days. In a haze of disbelief and emotional turmoil, Amber wept, not just for herself, but for the complex, tragic figure of her grandmother, Evelyn. What immense pain Evelyn must have carried, What profound loneliness to orchestrate such an elaborate, loving deception. The controlling nature, the suffocating love, the fear of loss. It all made a terrible, beautiful sense now. Evelyn hadn't just lost a child. She had endured the agony of giving him up, only to find him later, have him suffer his own loss, and then, in a desperate act of love and atonement, claimed his daughter as her own. Amber shared the full, agonizing truth with Sarah. Sarah, initially stunned, listened with a deep, empathic silence. "Oh, Amber," she whispered, her voice thick with compassion. "Your mother, Evelyn, what a burden she carried. What an extraordinary act of love. It's devastating, but it's also beautiful." Sarah helped Amber find a private investigator, not to uncover more secrets, but to piece together Daniel's life. They learned that Daniel, Evelyn's biological son, had indeed been raised in a loving adoptive family, but had led a challenging life. He had been a restless soul, a talented musician who had struggled with various hardships. He had married young, had a daughter, Amber, and then died tragically in a car accident in his mid-20s, leaving baby Amber an orphan. The investigator confirmed that Sister Agnes, aware of Evelyn's continued longing for her son, had discreetly reached out to Evelyn when Daniel's daughter was orphaned. It was a desperate, clandestine arrangement, meticulously orchestrated by Evelyn and Robert to adopt Amber, to provide her with a stable home, and to heal Evelyn's own gaping wound. The final piece of the puzzle came from an old, unassuming letter from Robert, her adoptive father, tucked away in the very bottom of the dresser, almost an afterthought. It was dated just after Amber's adoption, addressed to Evelyn. "My dearest Evelyn," Robert had written in his steady hand, "our little Amber is sleeping soundly. She has your spirit, my love, but Daniel's eyes. This is our second chance, isn't it? Our chance to give a child the life they deserve, the life we couldn't give Daniel. Don't you ever doubt this was the right choice. Our love for her is true, whether by blood or by choice, and your secret, my darling, is safe with me, always. We will give her a lifetime of love." Tears streamed down Amber's face as she read the words. Robert, her quiet, dependable father, had been a full partner in this incredible, loving deception. He had known, he had loved her, not as a step-granddaughter, but as his own. His willingness to embrace this complex truth, a testament to his profound, unwavering devotion to Evelyn and to Amber. The anger, the sense of betrayal that had initially overwhelmed Amber began to dissipate, replaced by a profound, overwhelming wave of compassion and love. She understood now. The dresser was not a symbol of deceit, but a time capsule of overwhelming love, unbearable grief, and desperate sacrifice. Her mother, Evelyn, had been driven by a primal, fierce love that transcended societal norms and conventional understanding. She had shielded Amber from a painful truth, yes, but she had also given her a lifetime of love, security, and a family. Amber felt a profound sense of peace. Her identity was not shattered, it was expanded, enriched. She was Amber, daughter of Daniel, the talented, restless musician. And she was Amber, granddaughter of Evelyn and Robert, who had loved her with an unyielding, fierce devotion. She had two lineages, two stories, intertwined in a complex, beautiful helix. She decided to honor the truth, not by exposing it publicly, but by living it. She spoke to her closest family, her cousin and a few aunts, sharing her story with a quiet dignity. They were shocked, but ultimately they understood. seeing the profound love that had driven Evelyn's actions. Amber felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in decades. The weight of the unspoken was lifted. She finally understood her mother, not as a source of bewildering rules, but as a deeply wounded, fiercely loving woman who had done the best she could with the hand she was dealt. The dresser, once a symbol of dread, now stood as a quiet monument to a love that surpassed all understanding, a love that had defied silence, circumstance, and even death to give Amber a life. The secret drawer had yielded its final, most profound truth, not a tale of simple regret, but a narrative of sacrifice, redemption, and the unbreakable, labyrinthine bonds of family. Chapter 7: The Unveiled Tapestry. The quiet house in Austin, once a place of lingering grief and suppressed secrets, was slowly being transformed. Amber, unburdened by the weight of the dresser's truth, felt a liberation she had never known. The initial shock had given way to a profound, almost spiritual understanding of her family's complex history. She now saw Evelyn not as a controlling matriarch, but as a woman who had navigated unimaginable loss and societal condemnation with immense, albeit flawed, strength. Amber decided to use her newfound clarity to help others. She began volunteering at a local senior center, connecting with individuals who, like her mother, might be carrying unspoken burdens from past eras. She found solace in listening to their stories, offering a compassionate presence, and subtly encouraging them to find peace through honest reflection. Her empathy, once focused solely on her mother, expanded to embrace a broader understanding of the human condition. She also started to explore Daniel's life more deeply. Her biological father, the restless musician who had died so young. She sought out old friends of his, musicians who remembered his talent, his passion, and his quiet struggles. She listened to his recordings, feeling a strange, visceral connection to the voice and melodies that were, in some genetic sense, part of her. She learned he was a good man, if troubled, a loving father who had tried his best in a world that often challenged him. She discovered that she shared his love for music, a passion she had suppressed in her structured life. She began to play the old piano in the living room, a dusty relic her mother had insisted they keep, finding a new, resonant joy in the keys. The house itself, Evelyn's house, began to change. Amber reorganized, but not with her mother's meticulous, almost anxious precision. Instead, she rearranged with a sense of purpose and openness. The dresser, no longer a forbidden object, stood as a testament to their story. She cleared its top, placing a framed photograph of a young, smiling Evelyn beside a picture of Daniel holding baby Amber. A silent acknowledgement of the beautiful, messy truth. Amber, inspired by her experiences, began writing. Not a memoir for publication, not yet, but a personal narrative, a detailed account of her family's story, a way to process the layers of truth and emotion. She filled notebooks with Evelyn's struggles, Robert's quiet strength, Daniel's fleeting life, and her own journey of discovery. It was her own way of weaving the unveiled tapestry, honoring each thread. Her relationship with Sarah deepened further. Sarah, who had always been her anchor, now became her confidant in this profound journey of self-discovery. They spoke about the nature of family, of love, of the secrets people keep to protect those they cherish. They realized that their own friendship, forged in childhood innocence, had in its own way mirrored the complexities of Evelyn's love, unspoken understanding, fierce loyalty, and enduring connection. The dresser, once the focal point of a consuming secret, had become a conduit for healing. It no longer represented a burden, but a profound gift. It had unveiled not a story of betrayal, but a narrative of boundless love, extraordinary sacrifice, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Amber, the dutiful daughter, had become Amber, the woman who understood that life's most profound truths often lie hidden, waiting patiently to be discovered, capable of breaking hearts, but ultimately of making them whole. She had found her place in a lineage more complex, more heartbreaking, and ultimately more beautiful than she could ever have imagined. Her life, now a vibrant testament to the unveiled tapestry of unconditional love.